The best advertisement for British weapons came from the enemy. The Wehrmacht prized the Bren. They didn't just use captured stocks, they integrated them. German printers churned out translated technical manuals. Officers issued the 7.62mm Leichtes Maschinengewehr 138E to frontline units across every theater. A German soldier grips the carry handle. He flips through a crisp, Gothic font manual. He slots a magazine home with a familiar click. London's arsenals told a different story. They were frozen in 1918. The official British primary light machine gun was the Lewis. It looked like a cannon barrel with a heavy clockwork drum on top. Empty, the Lewis weighed 30 pounds. A soldier struggled to lift the steel mass. His boots sank into the mud under the weight. The metal drum clattered and hissed. Mobility was impossible. The Lewis was too complex to build and too heavy to carry. It lacked a quick change barrel. During sustained fire, the heat warped the steel. Reloading the Pan magazine was a mechanical nightmare in a trench. Then there was the Vickers. It was reliable, but it belonged to a different age. A heavy tripod, a massive water jacket. It required a dedicated crew and gallons of coolant to keep from seizing. It was a fortress weapon for a static war. But the next war would be fast. The era of water-cooled giants was over. The world was moving toward air-cooled, lightweight precision. British High Command looked at their warehouses and saw scrap metal. The Small Arms Committee initiated a global search. London needed a machine gun for a mobile war. But the empire was broke. After 1918, the military budget collapsed. Buying expensive American hardware was a financial impossibility. The Small Arms Committee launched a global tender. They needed a miracle, not just a weapon. The Danish Madsen entered the ring. The French Hotchkiss followed. Even the British-designed Beardmore Farquhar joined the race. One weapon crushed the rest. The American Browning automatic rifle. The BAR was fast and reliable. But its price tag was a death sentence. London could not afford it. The search shifted to Eastern Europe. In 1930, British inspectors arrived at the Zabrojovka Brno factory. They found the ZB-26. It was light. It was precise. Most importantly, it was cheap to manufacture under license. The committee demanded changes. Engineers in Brno received a stream of British feedback. They had to adapt the Czech mechanism to the old British. 303 caliber. The result was the ZB-30. It was the first prototype chambered for the Empire's rimmed ammunition. The Zabrojovka Brno factory produced the model ZB-30. The transition to British ammunition changed everything. The original ZB-30 was built for the German 7.92mm round. It was rimless. Cartridges sat neatly in straight stacks. But the British Empire had used the rimmed .303 caliber since 1888. Replacing millions of rifles was too expensive. They had to rebuild the machine gun instead. From the side, the magazine had a sharp, aggressive curve. Why did the Bren acquire this iconic banana shape? The answer lies in the geometry of the old cartridge. Because of the protruding rims, the rounds could not sit flat. They stacked at an angle. To hold 30 rounds, the magazine had to bend. This created a mechanical nightmare. Engineers faced the rim lock phenomenon. If the rim of the upper cartridge slipped behind the one below it, the gun jammed instantly. The metal teeth of the shells would bite into each other. The feed stopped. The weapon became a club. Visual. A soldier slides around into the steel casing. His thumb presses down. He ensures each rim sits precisely in front of the last. One mistake meant a dead weapon in the middle of a firefight. Veterans developed their own ritual for survival. They never filled the magazine to its 30-round capacity. They loaded 27 or 28. This reduced the pressure on the internal spring. It sacrificed 2 bullets for the certainty of the next shot. One wrong move during loading invited a fatal malfunction. 140,000 rounds. That was the price of admission. Engineers at the Enfield facility pushed the prototypes to the edge of mechanical collapse. During these torture tests, the recoil spring snapped multiple times. No one noticed. The weapon kept cycling. Even when the lower receiver cracked under the stress, the mechanism refused to seize. How did this reliability translate into a name? The answer lies in a geopolitical marriage. BR for Brno, EN for Enfield. 2 cities, 1 weapon, the Bren. The British government secured a formal license for the design. Every unit produced on the island carried a hidden cost. London paid £3 in royalties to the Brno factory for every single gun. It was a fair price for a system that had decisively crushed its competitor, the Vickers Berthier. By the time the final blueprints were signed, the transition from prototype to mass production was complete. The first units rolled off the assembly line in late 1937. Before the storm of 1939, the British infantry received a weapon designed for the extremes of an empire. 1 soldier, 1 bipod, 22 pounds of steel and wood. The Bren Mark I delivered a cyclic rate of 540 rounds per minute. In the heat of a sustained firefight, accounting for reloads, that settled at 120. Accuracy stayed surgical. For long-range suppression, every third gun came with a heavy tripod. The heart of the system was an adjustable gas piston. A simple click changed the pressure. It functioned in the -50-degree gales of the Arctic. It fired through the +50-degree dust storms of the Sahara. The climate did not matter. The weapon simply worked. Every 10 magazines, the barrel became a glowing pillar of heat. The crew had seconds. A soldier pressed the release catch. He didn't reach for asbestos gloves or thick cloth. He grabbed the wooden carrying handle. The design allowed him to slide the scorching metal forward with his bare hands. The swap took 3 seconds. By September 1, 1939, the production line shifted into high gear for the first true test of the Great War. September 1, 1939, the German Wehrmacht crosses the Polish border. The illusions of the British High Command vanish in a single morning. London believed they were ready. 30,000 Bren guns were already in the hands of the infantry. On paper, it was an impressive force for a modern army. In reality, it was a drop in the ocean of a collapsing continent. The British Expeditionary Force landed in France. They expected a front line. They found a slaughterhouse. The Stuka sirens begin their rhythmic, terrifying wail. The sound tears through the air over the retreating columns. It is the acoustic signature of the Blitzkrieg. 30,000 machine guns, enough to equip the entire army of a small European nation. Now, they were being abandoned in the mud of northern France. The retreat narrows to a single point: Dunkirk. The Royal Scots received the final order. They must hold the line against the SS Totenkopf division. It is not a maneuver, it is a sacrifice. A battalion commander crawls through the dirt. He reaches for a Bren lying next to a fallen soldier. He clears the receiver. He opens fire. The line of tracers bites into the German ranks. The front moves toward the sea, yard by yard. The commander fires until the last magazine is empty. Then, he is silenced. They were not fighting for victory. They were buying minutes with lives. The British Army was bleeding out on the sand, 30 meters from the water. While the Royal Scots were trading lives for minutes on the beaches, logists in London were tallying a different kind of slaughter. The British Expeditionary Force was returning home. Barely. They survived the annihilation at Dunkirk, but the army they left behind did not. The numbers were a death sentence for the Empire's defense. Out of 30,000 Bren guns manufactured before the invasion, only 2,000 returned to British soil. 28,000 machine guns were gone. The math of the catastrophe was simple. Britain now had less than 1 machine gun for every kilometer of its coastline. The defense of the mainland had collapsed into a desperate inventory of emptiness. To fill the void, the War Office authorized the garrison guns. These were crude, stripped-down weapons born of panic. From this vacuum of steel, the Sten gun emerged. It was the cheapest submachine gun of the war. A weapon made of pipes and springs because proper engineering had become a luxury. But the tide shifted above. The Royal Air Force held the sky. As the threat of invasion cooled, the factories at Enfield accelerated. They stripped the Bren of its complexities. The Mark II version arrived. It was simpler. It was faster to build. Production costs dropped by 25%. Thousands of these new, streamlined barrels were immediately crated for the ports. The new shipments began the long transit toward the sands of North Africa. The crates meant for Egypt never left the docks of France. Instead of the desert, 27,000 British machine guns found a new master. The Wehrmacht did not destroy the spoils. They did not melt them down. A German quartermaster would pick up a captured Bren, inspect the receiver, and press a cold steel stamp into the metal. The new designation, MG 138E. The letter stood for English. Engineers in Berlin didn't guess. They knew this weapon. Before the occupation, the Czech ZB factory had already chambered the design for the 7.92 Mauser round. It was a perfect fit for the German supply chain. The contrast was immediate. High command expected a chaotic mix of unusable scrap. In reality, they printed formal German manuals and distributed the guns to the front lines. The scene was surreal. Soldiers in field gray uniforms patrolled the Atlantic Wall with the iconic curved magazines of the Bren. It became the backbone of coastal defense and anti-partisan units across occupied Europe. The German MG-34 was a masterpiece of engineering. It was precise, expensive, and notoriously delicate. A handful of dust could turn it into a steel club. The Bren was different. It was a tractor. German infantrymen preferred the captured British gun for its sheer reliability in the mud. They considered the Bren one of the most dependable foreign designs in the entire German arsenal. While the Wehrmacht integrated its new trophies across Europe, British infantry in the deserts of North Africa restructured their entire survival around a single barrel. They stopped thinking in terms of rifles. They began thinking in terms of the Bren. Who actually controlled the machine gun? The answer is every man in the section. 8 men formed a single tactical organism. 1 commander, 1 gunner, 1 assistant, 5 riflemen. The Bren was the center of gravity. The weight was shared. Each rifleman carried 2 magazines in addition to his own ammunition. The assistant carried 6 more plus a spare barrel. Together, a single squad hauled over 30 magazines into the dunes. 30 metal boxes of collective responsibility. Accuracy defined the weapon. In the heat of North Africa, most automatics choked on sand or vibrated into a blur. The Bren stayed steady. Its gas-operated piston moved in a perfectly straight line. Backward, forward. No lateral shift. No side-to-side wobble to ruin the grouping. The gunner gripped the pistol handle. He steadied the bipod. He felt the slow, rhythmic cycle of the bolt. Because of the lower rate of fire, the muzzle didn't climb toward the sky. A soldier could reliably place 5 rounds into a target-sized cluster at 300 yards. 5. Precision redefined British doctrine. While the German MG-34 relied on a high rate of fire to saturate an area, the Bren functioned as a sniper's automatic. It was about surgical suppression, not chaotic spraying. British infantry operated on a principle called 1 foot on the ground. This was a tactical dance of leapfrogging units. One group moved, the other provided cover. Then they alternated. The Bren group would pin the enemy down with focused fire, while the riflemen maneuvered forward. Once in position, the riflemen took over the overwatch, allowing the Bren team to advance to a superior vantage point. The Bren's mechanical design eliminated the horizontal bolt jump common in other weapons. It featured a perfectly placed pistol grip and a carrying handle that acted as a secondary support. This gave the operator total control. In the hands of a veteran, a 5-round burst achieved the same tight grouping as 5 individual aimed shots. German doctrine favored the cone of fire, a lethal spray designed to hit anything in a wide zone. The British ignored this. They fired tight 3 to 5 round bursts, specifically at the heads of German machine gun crews. This mechanical perfection sparked a peculiar joke among the frontline troops. Soldiers claimed the weapon was too bloody accurate for its own good. This surgical precision came with a strategic cost. Against massed infantry charges, the Bren lacked the mowing capability of its rivals. It could neutralize a specific bunker, but it struggled to suppress an entire advancing wave of men. 113,000 units. That is the scale of the universal carrier. The British industry produced more of these small tracked vehicles than all German tanks and self-propelled guns combined. This was the era of total mechanization. The carrier was a steel box on tracks. Inside, a Ford V8 engine roared. The smell of hot grease and gasoline filled the cramped compartment. Steel treads clattered against the pavement, vibrating through the bones of the three-man crew. Accuracy allowed the Bren to target aircraft, but total victory on the ground demanded mobility. The vehicle was built for speed and versatility. On the assembly lines, workers welded light armor plates together. Universal carriers moved along the belt, one after another. A rubber block was fitted into the front weapon slot. No complex mounts, just a simple rest for the Bren gun. The gunner gripped the handle. The barrel rested on the rubber. No bolts, no locks. He held the weapon in place by hand because he expected to dismount and fight on foot at any second. The platform accepted everything. Crews bolted on boys' anti-tank rifles for stopping light armor. They mounted heavy Vickers machine guns for sustained fire. American-built versions even carried the massive .50 caliber Browning. The machine evolved into a mobile arsenal. Some carried mortars, others packed Piat launchers. The most terrifying variant, the Wasp, swapped the machine gun for a high-pressure flamethrower. While factory lines churned out thousands of universal carriers, the paper machine within the Ministry of Supply ground at a much slower pace. Bureaucracy possessed its own lethal inertia. Look at the wooden butt of the weapon. A small metal stud sits flush against the surface. It had exactly one purpose: locking the gun into a heavy anti-aircraft tripod. By the late 1940s, these mounts were obsolete scrap metal. Yet the blueprints remained untouched. Factories in Enfield and Canada kept machining that useless piece of steel for decades. The war ended. The empire collapsed. Still, the studs appeared on every spare part. The production list was a ghost from a dead era. It stayed in force until 1976. Sometimes, bureaucratic theory met the mud of the battlefield. In 1942, the British High Command ordered a massacre at Dieppe. For the first time, Bren gunners carried the massive 100-round drum magazines. They were designed for the sky, for the tripod, for the spider sights. On the beach, the theory disintegrated. The heavy drums were too complex for the grit of the French coast. They jammed as soon as the first wave hit the shingle. British soldiers died under German fire while trying to clear their own weapons. The specialized drums failed as catastrophically as the raid itself. 1955. The British Empire was shrinking and the treasury was bleeding. While the world looked toward the future, London looked at its warehouses. Tens of thousands of Brens sat in Greece. How do you modernize a legend on a budget? The answer was the L4. The birth of NATO forced a choice: build something new or adapt. Integration meant switching to the 7.62 by 51 mm NATO cartridge. The old Bren fired rimmed rounds. The new standard was rimless. This was the geopolitical pivot where economy crushed innovation. The curved magazine, the silhouette of a generation, vanished. Rimless ammunition didn't need the arc. Engineers replaced it with a nearly straight 30-round box. They swapped the barrels. They milled the bolts. It was a mechanical organ transplant. Converting the existing inventory saved millions of pounds. It was a bureaucratic victory of logistics over progress. This industrial inertia allowed a weapon from the 1930s to police the Cold War. Only a few thousand L4 series weapons left the factories before the tide finally turned. Steel belts replaced box magazines. The British military officially began the transition to the belt-fed FN mag. The Bren had to win one final battle in Italy before it could become a NATO standard. April 1945. Northern Italy. The German surrender was only weeks away. Corporal Thomas Peck Hunter, a 21-year-old Royal Marine Commando, faced a wall of fire. 9 German machine guns and a battery of mortars covered 200 yards of open ground. No cover. No mistakes allowed. Hunter did not wait for an artillery screen. He grabbed his Bren and sprinted. He fired from the hip, charging directly into the crossfire. 1 man against 9 machine gun nests. He reloaded on the move, boots hitting the dirt as bullets kicked up dust around him. He reached the German line alone. He cleared 2 houses and captured 6 prisoners before his squad could even close the gap. His unit tried to follow, but stalled under heavy fire. Hunter saw the hesitation. He climbed a pile of rubble in plain sight. He became a silhouette against the sky. Firing burst after burst, he forced the Germans to aim at him instead of his men. The Bren barked until a German round struck him in the head. His sacrifice allowed the troop to advance and break the line. Posthumously, the Crown awarded Thomas Peck Hunter the Victoria Cross. Hunter's death in the Italian mud marked an end for a man, but for his weapon, it was the start of a global odyssey. The Bren outlived the empire that forged it. 2 soldiers face off in the frozen hills of the Korean peninsula. One is British. He grips a .303 Bren. The other is Chinese. He carries a ZB-26. It is the same Czech design, just chambered in 7.92. Both sides were killing each other with the same mechanical heart. How long can a single design dominate? The answer stretched across 70 years. In the humid jungles of the Malayan emergency, the Bren won again. Belt-fed guns were too heavy for the brush. The Bren was light. It was mobile. It was the gold standard for the SAS during the Dhofar Rebellion in Oman. In the desert, every bullet mattered. The Bren's controlled bursts saved ammunition where belt-fed guns wasted it. The Indian Army took this obsession further than London ever could. They opened a factory in 1942. They never stopped. Soldiers in 2009 patrolled the borders in modern digital camouflage. They carried 7.62 Brens manufactured on the same tooling used during World War II. The production run lasted longer than the entire existence of the Soviet Union. The Indian military finally retired the design in 2012.